Recently, PlayStation announced a recurring video series the company calls State of Play, a video showcasing news and announcements from around the world of PlayStation, delivered directly to consumers, much like Nintendo's Direct and Microsoft's Inside Xbox. This comes a few months after Sony announced PlayStation would be skipping E3 2019, echoing prevailing industry sentiments that the once preeminent gaming expo's relevance in a digital instant news world is fading away. State of Play was announced March 22nd, went live March 25th, and garnered a heavily negative reaction, complaints ranging from the showcase's focus on PlayStation VR titles to the lack of a big reveal and the whole thing just not being interesting in general. A few days after PlayStation's inaugural State of Play, Borderlands developer Gearbox Software held a conference of their own at PAX East. In the weeks leading up to the conference, the developer hinted it would be revealing the much-anticipated Borderlands 3, a series that hadn't seen a mainline sequel since Borderlands 2 in 2012. In what could have been a much shorter conference, Gearbox waited until the end of an hour-long show to unveil its first trailer for Borderlands 3. Among the time sinks viewers sat through before getting to the announcement Gearbox had teased was CEO Randy Pitchford performing a live and unrelated magic trick. The response to Gearbox's showing, a majority of which is focused on Borderlands 3's reveal, is far more positive than it was and is for State of Play. A good amount of criticism was heaved Pitchford's way, but browse YouTube and social media and there's a heavy imbalance in the overall reaction. Elongated, superfluous conferences have plagued reveals in events like E3 and others for quite a long time, and Gearbox's conference, even while at PAX East, was no different. Over the years, discussing which conferences were the best often revolved around which conference left out the most fluff. I recall PlayStation's E3 2017 conference being praised for its steady stream of games and limited corporate mumbo-jumbo, while PlayStation's E3 2018 conference was held in different venues, was marred by technical issues, and as a result is remembered very differently. This relatively new strategy of delivering clear, concise news directly to consumers, utilized by Nintendo, Microsoft, and now Sony, doesn't just respect consumers' time, but is form-fitting. It's a transparent strategy that makes sense in the digital age. I want and need to be clear here, I don't think Gearbox's conference is that big of a deal, nor was it even that bad of a show. The Borderlands 3 reveal itself was great, and really more than anything, I just found the show as a whole needlessly long and tedious. If it weren't for the reaction to State of Play, I wouldn't have written a single sentence about Gearbox, let alone made a video about it. When State of Play was initially announced on March 22nd, it was done so via a 115-word blog post. That's it. There was no cryptic tweet, no Easter egg-packed teaser, no promise of a long-sought-after sequel. Sony did exactly what it said it was going to do, and did so plainly and succinctly. In a time when companies are pivoting the way they deliver news to better fit our more direct and instant digital age, wouldn't we rather discuss why things like Randy Pitchford's magic trick, a magic trick that was 5 minutes shorter than the entirety of State of Play, should be the kind of pomp and circumstance left to showcases, reveals, and pressers of the past? You may not have found State of Play interesting, and you may not have any interest in PSVR, none of that is wrong. However, to say Sony disrespected your time, to say consumers deserve some huge surprise announcement simply because you want a huge surprise announcement is a severe overreaction. And State of Play's overreaction is a microcosm of a much bigger issue. It's the ridiculous internet outrage machine which, when tempered and targeted correctly, can make real positive change. But when misguided and or taken advantage of for attention and clicks, doesn't drive change as much as it drives divisiveness and confused, aimless outrage. The AAA industry is broken in more than a few unacceptable ways, from games releasing in ambiguous states to reliance on microtransactions and post-release bug fixes. And part of fixing these broken parts resides in understanding how to react to industry news, to show companies exactly how consumers feel, which is not always primarily represented by sales, no matter how much AAA companies would like to think. It's to understand and separate the instances when companies actually disrespect consumers, and those other times you just happen not to be interested in anything shown in a 19-minute trailer, to understand when to get angry, when not to get angry, and when and how to express those frustrations. When companies make late moves to the Epic Store after allowing consumers to pre-order on other platforms, like we saw with Metro Exodus, that's a problem. When a company calls paid early access a VIP demo and the demo turns out to be a buggy and broken beta test, that's not being honest with consumers. When a company puts pay-to-win loot boxes in a multiplayer game and proceeds to disingenuously defend its grind-heavy economy under the guise of wanting players to feel pride and accomplishment, then downvoting and loudly voicing frustration, as long as it's done in a tasteful and non-harassing manner, is completely acceptable. In those instances and more, consumers should be frustrated. Consumers should want and indeed expect to be treated better, and media, from traditional outlets to YouTubers, should approach these topics in a respectable, clear, informed, and meaningful manner. I often say AAA companies are out of touch, and I believe they are, but this doesn't mean they don't read and see headlines and thumbnails. They do when they're paying attention, and when those headlines and thumbnails are misguided avenues for misguided anger, I don't think it's a stretch to wonder how that affects the industry's executives and decision makers, let alone the developers and artists that actually make the industry work and worth caring about.